Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are continuing this season lineup prediction series as we take a look at your Montreal Canadiens up north of the border. So we'll be taking a look at Les Habitants in today's video. Alright, so let's start off with the forward lines. For your Montreal Canadiens, we saw a little bit of a shift here over the last couple of weeks, especially with Kotkaniemi. So we'll be getting to that here. So let's look at the top six. You got Mike Hoffman, Nick Suzuki, and Cole Caulfield. Now, you could argue that this is pretty interchangeable, specifically on the left side. I think Caulfield and Suzuki have pretty much notched their spot on the top line, especially with what happened in the playoff run last year. But there's an argument to be made that 3, if not 4 other guys could be on that top line. Now, I like Mike Hoffman because of his pure scoring ability, and this is just a pure scoring line. Now, if the Montreal Canadiens want to add maybe a little bit more of a guy that can get in front of the net maybe and kind of be, I like to think, the prototypical Patrick Hornquist, the guy that can score points, not necessarily goals, but assists as well. Can score points from in front of the net. Picking up a rebound in front. Being that guy in front of the net. Because nothing against Suzuki or Caulfield. I think Suzuki can do that, and he has done that well. But Cole Caulfield, more of the guy from the perimeter. He's not necessarily known to be a guy that's always getting in front of the net and causing a disturbance. You could get that from a guy like Brendan Gallagher, and even a guy like Josh Anderson, who I think are real competitors to jump on that top line as well. But for now, I got Hoffman, Suzuki, and Cole Caulfield. Second line, you got Tyler Toffoli and Brendan Gallagher on the wings, alongside the newly acquired Hab, Christian Dvorak. Now, I've talked a lot about Christian Dvorak in his time in Arizona. It was Christian Dvorak and Christian Fischer, the two Christians in Arizona. And I think Dvorak, we just talked about that Patrick Hornquist guy. The guy that's going to get in front of the net, pick up points from rebounds, crashing the net. You have Dvorak and Gallagher, who can both do that on the same line. I love this second line. You have Dvorak, right? He could win faceoffs, a good centerman. Brendan Gallagher, we know what a fighter he has been. And, he always gets a little bit bloody during the playoffs every year. Tyler Toffoli, who could just sit at the top of the circle and rip a couple goals past the goaltender. He can do that. That's what Tyler Toffoli's there for. So now you have Hoffman and Toffoli, who can both do that. Pure sniping goal scorers. You have those guys. Because, let's be honest, Jonathan Drouin really kind of disappointed in that regard. So, there you go. There's your new top 6. Now, there are some questions about Christian Dvorak. And the questions are, he needs somebody that can move the play forward, because he's not necessarily the quickest player. He's not the best skater. So if there's one bad thing about Christian Dvorak, has been that. But in Arizona, he didn't get talked about much because it's a very small market and they're not necessarily in the playoffs a lot. A guy like Christian Dvorak could thrive in the environment in Montreal. And the way he plays, he is a Montreal Canadian player, especially with the way they run things right now. He plays a lot like guys like Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher, and he just continues to build that culture of what the Montreal Canadiens are. So, after all that praise and love to the top 6, let's take a look at the bottom 6. Now, this gets very interesting. We've got Jonathan Drouin, the French boy native, playing on the third line. I don't know if Drouin will be there in training camp. I do not see Drouin being on the third line at the beginning of this year and being happy about it. We've seen what he's done in the past with Tampa Bay. He wasn't getting enough minutes. He didn't play. And he caused a lot of drama down there. Steve Yzerman ended up trading him for Mikhail Sergachev. I don't think that's going to be the price tag for him this time around. He looks like a middle 6 at best. Really a really good third liner, and a sometimes, if there's an injury, second liner. That's what we're looking at with Drouin. It's good that he's there. He's going to get another opportunity here. He's going to be that pure scoring guy. You got Jake Evans, who I think is a nice center. We're going to see him develop down the middle, which, with what happened with Kotkaniemi, should give Canadian fans a little bit of concern. But on the third line, I think he'll be okay. and Josh Anderson. So as long as Anderson can stay healthy, I really like that third line for the most part. Jake Evans in his first full season, and I say full season like an 82 game schedule season, so we're going to learn a little bit more about Jake Evans. I really like that third line. Very solid overall. Now looking at the fourth line, you got Matthew Perrault, again another Quebec native coming in to Montreal. A big loss for the Winnipeg Jets. I think a guy like Perrault coming in, he's going to add some depth scoring. He's obviously going to add that veteran leadership in the locker room, that little bit of extra poise in the room, that little bit of swagger. We know the Habs definitely run well off of that. And I know that's a guy that Marc Bergevin would like, is a Matthew Perrault, and it makes total sense why he came in. You also have a guy like Ryan Poehling. Ryan Poehling, I have him as that fourth line center. There's a couple arguments you could make about maybe a guy like Artturi Lehkonen being there, or a Cedric Paquette, or even a Sebastian Dia, who are some of the depth guys I don't have on the roster here. Even Matthew Perrault could play center, but I'd like to see more of Ryan Poehling this season. And he's been playing in Laval now for 2 years. I think this is an opportunity for him to jump into the lineup, play in the bottom six with Jake Evans, and kind of work his way up the lineup. And that's not going to be easy because you have guys like Ryan Suzuki and Christian Dvorak there. But I really like what they've got on this team overall. A lot of praise for that forward group. Like I mentioned, some depth guys, a couple more. Quebec natives. You got Cedric Paquette and Sebastian Dia. You also have some other young players. A guy like Jesse Yelenin and Artturi Lehkonen, who I think could be an easy guy to jump back into the lineup come a quick injury. He's really a utility knife. It was hard for me not to put Lehkonen in the lineup. I think some people would argue he should be in there over Poehling. But there's definitely a discussion to be had for that. Looking at your top six defensemen, you got Joel Edmondson and Jeff Petrie. Now, this is a little bit concerning because you don't have Shea Weber there. That is a big, big loss for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think that definitely gets put on display. And I think Joel Edmondson had a great season last year. But now you're putting him on the top pair. You're asking for a lot from a guy that isn't necessarily going to be able to play the minutes that Shea Weber did. And maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe you'll see some of the guys in the second and third pair step up and play more minutes. But that is a little bit of a worrying factor losing him. Now the good thing is to lessen the blow a little bit, they've got Alexander Romanov. Now let me continue. I didn't finish yet. They also have David Savard, who is supposed to be that guy that they got in free agency this year that kind of takes on that Shea Weber role. That 31, 32-year-old, he's obviously a lot younger than Weber, but he's that kind of defenseman that, tough to play against in front of the net, going to be cross-checking that forward in front of the net, keeping him out of the front, in front of Carrie Price, not afraid to drop the gloves, just a classic blue-collar, blue-blooded defenseman. That's really what they get from David Savard. Again, continuing that theme in Montreal, Edmondson and Savard absolutely do that in terms of just that gritty, tough team to play against, a team that you don't want to play in a 7-game playoff series. And we saw what this kind of team can do in the playoffs. We saw the Islanders do the exact same thing. Just tough to play against, and they really make it difficult on you over 7 games. I think you're seeing that here with the Habs once again going into this year, despite not having a guy like Shea Weber in the lineup. Now looking at the third pair, you have Ben Sharat and Chris Weidman returning from Russia. He was given like the best defenseman in the KHL last year, so he's coming over from the Continental Hockey League. He's going to come back to the North America, not the States, but North America, and get a chance to play in the NHL again. So very excited to see what Chris Weidman does. Obviously, things didn't end well for him in his time in North America because he was with Ottawa. Part of that whole Uber situation in Ottawa with Matt Duchene and who else was there? Dzingel. All those guys ended up getting traded or left, like Chris Weidman. Look at some of the depth defensemen. There's a decent amount of depth on this Habs team on the blue line. Now, despite losing some guys over the last couple of years, it doesn't really seem like it's phasing the Habs too much because they just have new guys to take the role. They lost guys like Cale Fleury. They lost what's his name? He's in Florida now. They lost him on waivers. So they've been losing some guys here, but they're still able to keep it together. And you're looking at that here. You got Brett Kulak, right? Caden Gooley, Josh Brooks, and Xavier Ouellet. Ouellet has kind of had his struggles in Detroit. He comes over to Montreal. I believe he was there last season, so he's coming back. I really like that depth there. I like guys like Josh Brooks and Caden Gooley in particular. But Brett Kulak, does, in the event that they lose a guy like Savard or Edmondson or Sharat, he can bring that little bit of edge and size. And Brett Kulak did fairly well in the playoffs last year. And now in between the pipes, it's going to stay the exact same. You got Carrie Price and Jake Allen coming back once again. It was a great tandem last year. I think everything that happened this offseason with the expansion, Carrie Price, the starting elite goaltender, the face of the team, waiving his no-move clause to be put on unprotected by the Seattle Kraken, and so that way they wouldn't take Jake Allen. That was a really ballsy move by Carrie Price. And I know he has a connection to the northwestern or whatever that is, Western United States over there in Seattle. He has a connection up there. I'm sure Jake Allen looks at that and is like, man, this is a real one. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing there. You also have some depth guys that I just, we're still waiting to see what happens with a guy like Charlie Lindgren and Michael McNiven. But I think there's some potential here with what the Habs have with Carey Price and Jake Allen. They were a great tandem last year. Just got to keep it up over now an 82-game schedule instead of a 52-game schedule. You're going to be asking for a little bit more from some of those higher-end players, including guys like Carey Price. All right, so let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I think, for the most part, the Habs lineup, there isn't too much discussion, but I do have two questions. One, who should be the first line left winger alongside Suzuki and Caulfield? That's the first question. And number two, should Ryan Poehling get a shot in the lineup opening night? Or should they put in a guy like Cedric Paquette or Arturi Lehkonen in the lineup instead? Let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.